So today's daf yomi is Gittin 26a, Gittin Chavav. So we're going to start with the Mishnah on the top of 26a. Mishnah says, "Hakosef tov se Gittin." So somebody says, "I'm going to write the tofe." If a scribe who wants to get ahead of the game, he wants to have his templates for all his documents all lined up. So he writes a tofes, a template of the get. He writes the two parts of the get. There's what's called a tofes and what's called a toref. A tofes is the parts of the get that are interchangeable, and the toref is the unique parts of the get, the time, the place, the names. So somebody writes the tofes of the get. In order for it to be an acceptable get, it needs to leave behind the place of the space for the place of the man, the woman, and the date. And so too, shtari malva, if you want to use a template for a loan document, you need to leave behind the names and the dates and the place. Rashi says, even if you have the date appropriate, we still have to leave it behind because we're concerned. This is a decree that if you're going to start doing it with the loan documents, the next thing you know, you'll start doing it with the Gittin as well. So too, shtari mekach, if you want to leave behind, I think we need to get the syrup for the pancakes. Otherwise, it's not. We're giving you half a. It's a big. I see that there's a big Indian here of waffles and pancakes for the breakfast. So we need to get the syrup for it. We're gonna have to go to the store today and get the syrup. People are coming back with beautiful waffles. But yeah. Okay, so shtari mekach, if you want to use a contract for a sale, also there too. You have to leave behind these essential, unique aspects of the sale. You can't fill out the sale in advance. And it's again because of a decree that you might come to do that for a get. When a get, there's a problem, and we'll see that the problem for a get is that the get needs to be written specifically for this woman. And what's the reason why? What's the reason? It says mipnei takana, on account of a takana. The Gemara is going to explain what this phrase means. What does it mean on account of the takana? And then the Gemara says, Rebbe Lazar machshir b'kula, and Rebbe Lazar says in all these cases it's okay. In all these cases, if you write the template in advance, chutz mikitei nashim, except for the get for a woman, shenemar v'kasav la lishma. It says v'kasav la, which means the get needs to be written entirely for lishma, means to say that even the tofes of the get for a woman needs to be written lishma. So even a template is not acceptable for a get, according to the last line of the Mishnah.
I heard a question from Spansky. Why is it saying really? And everything here is like really lesser. So why does it just say this whole halacha in the end or something?
So the Gemara is going to ask that question. Why, if the first part of the Mishnah is also Rebbe Lazar, why did it say Rebbe Lazar at the end? The Gemara is going to ask that question on Amud Beis. The Gemara is going to ask that question. But before we get to that, first we got to get there. So Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Tzarach sheyaniach af makom hareyat muteras l'kol adam. So first Shmuel is adding in, says Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Shmuel, that not only do you have to leave behind the date, the place, the all those things, the time, the date, and the place, and the names, you also have to leave behind this essential line. What's the essential line? The phrase hareyat muteras l'kol adam, that you are now permitted to every single person. That's an essential aspect. And this follows the position. And now the Gemara is telling us something else, that this Mishnah that says that you need to leave behind, you can't write the get in advance, that you need to leave behind the specific unique names to this get. You know, you could come into a court and an American law, you say, I need a document that says that Bill's divorcing Jane, no problem. But a get is different. The get needs to be written with specific intent. So it cannot be written in advance, certain essential parts. This follows the position of Rebbe Lazar, we've seen throughout our tractate. So far, there's this distinction between Rebbe Lazar and Rebbe Meir. Rebbe Lazar says, Eidei Mesire Karti, and Rebbe Meir says, Eidei Chasima Karti. Rebbe Meir says the essential aspect is the signing of the get. We don't care how it's written, generally speaking, biblically. The get just needs to be signed for the right reason, whereas Rebbe Lazar says no. The get, the essential aspect is the handing over the get in front of witnesses. So when it says it needs to be written for her, that does not refer to the signing. That refers to the writing of the get needs to be done for lishma. And so therefore, this part that says the Torah needs to be written lishma, or the tofes needs to be written lishma, but the first clause of the Mishnah, which says that the Torah of the get needs to be written for her, that's Rebbe Lazar's position. The Amar Edi Mesira Karti says the essential aspect is not the signing, but the handing over. We require the writing of the get lishma. And now the Gemara says, look, we've already seen now 3 Mishnayos in a row that tell us that Rabbi Meir says, and 3 anonymous Mishnayos that tell us that Rebbe Lazar is the one who says Edim Mesire Karti. And in all these cases, we're going to say, in all these cases, we said, V'hu Shashir Makam HaTorah. It's where he left behind the place that we say the get is kosher, but it follows Rebbe Lazar because it's as long as he left behind the Torah, this unique part of the get. And the Gemara now tells us, we need all these 3, we need Shmuel to tell us in all these 3 anonymous Mishnayos that the Mishnah is like Rebbe Lazar, and to tell us in all these cases he leaves behind the place of the Torah. One, we had the first case, Rashi reminds us that you're not allowed to write the get on something that's attached to the ground. But if you wrote it on that he said you're not allowed to write the get on something that's attached to the ground, and that is like Rebbe Lazar. You can't write the get on something that's attached to the ground. And the second thing we saw was that everyone is kosher to write a get. And then the third thing we saw, as long as they left behind the place, and then we had, remember the dispute, is it Gadol Omed al Kabav, is it an adult standing next to them, or is it referring to the tofes? And then we have the third thing that Shmuel says that this case of Akosev Tosei Gittin, that if somebody writes the tofes of the get, that's like Rebbe Lazar says Edim Mesira Karti. And says the Gemara, we need this statement to Shmuel in all 3 cases. Utsricha, the Iyashmin and Hakamaisa. Because if we only had the first case that tells us that you're not allowed to write on something attached to the ground, I might have said, so hold on, I lost the place. The Yashminach Mais by Bahi with the equal Rebbe Lazar, the Katani and Kosfin. I might have said in that case that you can't say it's like Rebbe Lazar. Why? Because first it says don't write, and then it says Katani. Then it says Kasvu al Mechubar kosher. First it says you can't write, and then it says if you do write on something attached to the ground, kosher. And so therefore, because since the Mishnah is inherently contradictory, therefore we have to say you can't write the Tofes, but you can write the Torah. Aval Sefer, but the next clause it says the Katani Shein Kiyum Get El B'Chosvav. The next Mishnah which says that the certification of the get is only with its signatures. Maybe that's Rabbi Meir. And you might say you don't need to leave the space of the Torah. And Shmuel comes to teach us that you need it, and it's Rebbe Lazar. And then the next clause which says, and in that Mishnah which says Ein Kiyum Get El B'Chosvav, that's not to come tell us that the Torah is kosher, but it's referring to the middle clause of that Mishnah. Remember the middle clause, that this phrase that Ein Kiyum Get El B'Chosvav, that's referring to the middle one, that even if the woman writes the document, it's okay because the essential part is who signs it, and that's because it's telling us most of the Eidei Mesira are the ones who sign it. Their signing does not really mean signing, and so therefore, if we just had a middle clause, we were saying we might have said that's Rabbi Meir Damer Eidei Chasima Karsi, and then Yesh Minin Ba'ahi. If we just had this third case, Ahi Nami equal Rebbe Lazar. I might have said, okay, this one's like Rebbe Lazar. He might be the safer Rebbe Lazar. Have a racial Rebbe Lazar. Meaning, say we might have thought, oh well, because the last clause in the Mishnah is like Rebbe Lazar, then maybe the first clause is not Rebbe Lazar. Because as already Shia and Judah pointed out, if the last clause is Rebbe Lazar, how can we say the first clause is Rebbe Lazar? So Shmuel saying no, the first clause is also Rebbe Lazar. So then we'll have to answer this question. Well, if the last clause is Rebbe Lazar, why do we have to say the first clause is Rebbe Lazar? But that's why we have all these 3 cases. So then the Gemara says that the Sofrim can write the documents like this on account of a takana. My takana, what's the takana? Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Amar Rabbi Yonasan, but takana Sofer. We want to help out the scribe. Meaning, because we want to help out the scribe, because the scribe, everybody thinks the scribe's job is so easy, just has to write. No, it's very hard to make a living as a Sofer. Very, very hard. He doesn't have it easy. He's got a hard life. So we want to help him out. So we say, let him write the templates, the Shema, be prepared in advance. So the guy shows up in his office, he can be prepared, so don't make him drop everything. Rebbe Lazar, the Amar Ede Misira, and therefore Ede Misira Karti. And so therefore, Rabbi Yona's son is saying that it's allowed the scribe to write it, but it's going to the position of Rebbe Lazar. It says that it's Ede Misira Karti. So really, it needs to be written Lashma. Ubedinu, and really, Afilu Tofes Namilu. You really shouldn't be allowed to write the Tofes. You shouldn't really, because we're concerned that if you write the Tofes, you might come to write the Torah. But Mishum Takana Sofrim, because you want to help out the scribe, Shara Rabbanan. So really, we should make a rabbinic law that you can't write the Tofes in advance. But come on, let's go easy on the scribe because he has a hard life. So therefore, the rabbis threw a bone to the Sofrim. Rabbi Yehuda posel b'kulan. Rabbi Yehuda disqualifies in all these cases. Why does he disqualify? He's not concerned about the Sofrim. Gazer Tofes atu Toref, Gazer Shtaros atu Gittin. And Rabbi Yehuda says, no, we're not going to allow it because what's going to happen then is that you're going to, if you write the Torah in advance, if you write the Tofes in advance, you're going to write the Torah in advance. If you write the other documents in advance, you're also going to write the get in advance. Rabbi Lazar Machshav B'Kuan, Chutz Gittin Nashim, and Rabbi Lazar at the end allows all these cases you to write it in advance except for a divorce because Tofes atu Torah Gazer. He says you can't write the Torah in advance. And so therefore you might come to write the Torah by a get. So therefore he doesn't allow you to do it by a get. But shtaros atu gittin will gazer. But he doesn't make the decree by shtaros to a regular gittin. So therefore he allows you to write the other contracts in advance, but he doesn't allow you to write the tofes of a get in advance. The other shtaros, it seems from here it's a little ambiguous. But Rashi tells us it means specifically he allows you to write the tofes of other stars in advance. He still doesn't allow you to write the other names and places in advance, according to the third approach. And Gemara says, what's the reasoning why Rabbi Lazar says he's machshav b'kulan except for Gittin Nashim? Because it says v'kasav la l'shma. It says he has to write it specifically for her, which means l'shma. Gemara says v'aki ksiv la. But when it says that he has to write it for her, isn't that a reference only to the Torah? If it's not a reference to the Tofes, why does the Rabbi Elazar allow her to write the Tofes? Ella, so it's not a proof text. Ella ema mishum shenemar v'kasav lo l'shma. So it's not Rashi. We have to read this last Rashi. Rashi says, don't read it shenemar demashma mineyo. Don't read it as because there's a kasav law. That's the proof text that he has to write the Tofes l'shma. Meaning to say. Ella mishum, but only on account of, meaning to say on account of we make a decree, because it says cause of law, and that's referring to the Torah. Therefore, we make a decree that you also can't write the Tofes because you might come to write the Torah. So the Gemara says the question that's on Shia's mind and Judah's mind, Kasher the Rebbe Lazar or the Rebbe Lazar. Well, the first part of the Mishnah, which Shmuel said is Rebbe Lazar, tells us you can't write the Torah Lishma, but you can write the Tofes. And the last part says, Rebbe Lazar says, you can't even write the Tofes Lishma. So it's contradiction within Rebbe Lazar. So the Gemara gives us the answer. Trei Tanai Aliba the Rebbe Lazar. It's two Tanaim arguing about what Rebbe Lazar was saying. Two Tanaim arguing about what Rebbe Lazar is saying. Rebbe Shabtai Amar Chizkiah Mishum Kitata. So now we go back to the question, what was the takana? So the first answer was takana sofrim. We want to give the sofrim a break. The second answer is on account of a ketata, meaning to say that when it says, Rashi says, when it says mipnei takana, that was not to allow us to write the tofes in advance, but it was that you need to leave the Torah. Meaning to say, really, technically speaking, you can write everything in advance, but we're saying that you need to leave the Torah blank because otherwise it can make a huge fight. And it's Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says you don't need to write anything in advance, Lishma. You don't have a problem with Shema. You can really write everything in advance. But let's say that Rachel is going to walk by, let's just say Leah is going to walk by and she's going to hear Yaakov is divorcing Leah, and she's going to say, what? She's going to get all upset. This sofer is anticipating that they're breaking up. And then she hears this and she's going to get upset. So therefore, Meir says, no, you can't write it in advance. Married. So that's Rav Shabbos says. Rabbi Meir. The only thing that we require is the signatures. You could really write the Torah in advance. But sometimes she'll walk by and she'll hear the scribe, the kakasif, and he's writing the get for her in advance. She'll think, oh, my husband told him to write me a get. She's going to be upset at him. Okay. Third approach is Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda Amar Avini Mishum Takanas Agunos. He says no, because we're worried about agunos. And normally aguna refers to a woman who's chained to a dead marriage, that she can't get divorced because of some legal implication. Here, the word aguna means something else. Here, the word aguna, as you'll see from the context, is referring to a woman who's too easily divorced, and then she's going to have a hard time getting married. I mean, to say that if the get is so easily written, the husband can divorce her 1, 2, 3, and that makes it too easy for her to get divorced. We don't want the people just making divorce that you can just, oh, I had a bad interaction over the dinner table. Boom! I so easily get divorced. Just print it up on my laptop. No, you have to make it a little bit, slow down the process a little bit. Rav Chisda says the name Avini Mishum Takanas Agunos, because otherwise it makes it too easy to get divorced. So the Gemara says, Amrila Rabbi Meir, Amrila Rabbi Elazar. Some say that this is going according to the position of Rabbi Meir, who says Eidei Chasim Karti, and some say it goes according to the position of Rabbi Elazar, who says Eidei Mesira Karta. Amrila Rabbi Meir. Some say it goes according to Rabbi Meir, who says Eidei Chasim Karti. And really, Ubedinu Dafiu Torah Namilotav. Really, you can write the Torah. But then sometimes he'll get upset with her. He'll get so mad at her, he'll lose his temper. Anyway. And he'll throw the get down in front of her, and she'll be too easily divorced. And so then, as a consequence of this, he'll throw it down in front of her, and she'll be prohibited to marry anybody else, and she'll be prohibited to return to him, and so she'll remain as a divorce. So why is she called an aguna there? So someone explained, because what's going to happen is he'll throw the get down, and we're not sure if the get landed near enough to her to be counted as a valid divorce. It'll create this very difficult situation, and then he won't be there anymore to give her a proper divorce, and so then she'll really be an aguna. That's how some Rishonim will explain it. Amrila Rabbi Elazar. Some say that this is the Gemara of Rabbi Elazar, who says Eidei Mesira Karti, which means that technically speaking, B'dinu Dafiu Tofes Nami Lo Lichtov. That really is the opposite approach. That really he shouldn't even write the Tofes. But sometimes he needs to go overseas to right away quickly. He won't find the scribe. And I'll abandon her. So this is the traditional approach to what aguna is, that she'll be chained to a dead marriage. We want to make it easy for him to divorce her if he's got to get out of town quickly. So by the way, two opposite approaches as to why you can't write it in advance. One is because I'll make it too easy for him to divorce her. The other one is you want to make it easier for him to divorce her, so you can't write the Torah, but we allow you to write the Tofes. You had a question, Judah? Okay, so then the Gemara says you have to write the Makom Hazman. You have to write the place and the date of the get. The Gemara says Kapasik Fatani. The Mishnah says clearly you have to write the place and the date. Roshna Minanisuin, Roshna Mina Erison, Roshna Minanisuin, Roshna Mina Erison. It doesn't. We're not drawing a distinction whether you're writing whether it's from full marriage or from the betrothal itself only. So you have to write the place and the date. So the Gemara says, wait 1 second. Remember we had earlier back on 17a. Remember that Hashem, with help of Hashem, we studied the daf together back on 17a, and we said that there are 2 reasons why the get needs the date on it. What's the 2 reasons? Remember we said? What's the 2 reasons why the get needs to have a date on it? Remember we saw 2 theories? Anybody remember? One is because Pasachoso. What's the problem with Pasachoso? That maybe he'll marry his somebody who's niece, a family member, or anybody will marry, and he'll want to make sure that and we're worried that he's going to have too much mercy on her, and he's not going to let her get punished for adultery. So we write the date and the time to make sure that she can't get out of it. And that's the first theory. The second theory is, everybody remember the second theory? Yes. Peros, that we want to make sure that either he or she doesn't make a false claim to get his Peros, because he's only entitled to the fruits of the principle that she brings in while they're married. But once they're divorced, he doesn't have the rights to them. So we want to limit that. So now the only issue is, when would a husband be entitled to Peros? From the full marriage, not from the betrothal. From the betrothal, he's not entitled to her Peros because they're not living together. So Peros is in place of her, in return for him supporting her, mizonos, but he doesn't give mizonos from the Erisin. So therefore, the Gemara says, Bishlam makes sense why you have to write the date if it's coming from the Nisuin. Makes sense why you have to write it from the full betrothal, whether you say that the reason why you need the date is either because of Basachoso or because of Peros. But if you're willing to say that you have to write the time and the date even from the betrothal, so that makes sense according to the one who says that you write the date because maybe you would have mercy on her if she committed adultery. That makes sense. But according to one who says it's only because of the fruits, Arusa Misa Peri, the Arusa doesn't get the fruits. So Amrav Amram. So according to the one who says, so this is the question on the one who says the whole reason you write the date is because of Peros. So Amrav Amram Hamilsa Shamas Mine Du'ua. This teaching I heard from Ua, the Amar Mishum Tekanas Vlad. He said, I heard a teaching from Ua who says that what's the reason why you write the date? To help the baby out. Meaning to say, we want to help the baby. But I didn't know what Ua was referring to. Once I learned this brisa, which says, Omer Kismu get Arusasi. He says, write a get for my Arusa, Ukishach Masena Agrashena. When I fully marry her, I'll divorce her. Ain't no get. He said, write a get for my wife, and when I'll fully marry her, I'll divorce her. That's not going to be a get. But Amar Ua, he says, write a get for my betrothed fiance, and when I fully marry her, at that moment I'll divorce her. And Ua said that's not a get. Why? Matam. What's the reason why Ua said it's not a get? Because people might think, they'll see the date on the get, and they'll say, listen, the child was born afterwards, and they'll think that divorce came before the get, and then they'll say, this child was born out of wedlock, which while the child is not a mamzer, it would still be considered a defect in the child's lineage. And so therefore, so too in this case also, so too here also in this case, even from the betrothal, you want to write the date on the betrothal, on the get, to prove that the get came prior to this child being born. So Amar Rabbi Zera, Amar Rabbi Abba, or the get came after the child being born. Really, the child being born from an arusa is also a problem. So how does it really even help?
Yeah, which would be arusa.
What?
It was after Nisuin.
No, we know why you need a get from the Nisuin. We know why you need the time and date from the Nisuin. The question is why you need the time and date from the Erisin. So why do you need the time and date from the Erisin? And so they're saying because Takana Safwad, because otherwise we might have think that the child was born to somebody the child wasn't supposed to. But if the child is born from the Erisin, it's also not so kosher. So first of all, I guess it's not as bad as a pagam. And also we saw that in Yehuda, they used to, remember we saw in Ksubos and people of Yehuda, they would put the husband and wife together for one instance. Maybe it's referring to that. So then the Gemara, but that's a question that's bothering me. I'm going to text Rav Zev afterwards. Remind me after the, Amar Rabbi Zera, Amar Rabbi Abba Bar Shua, Amar Rav Amnuna Saba, Amar Rav Adi Bar Abba, Amar Rav Halacha Rebbe Elazar. The law is like Rebbe Elazar. The law is like Rebbe Elazar in the sense that we say that you don't need to write the tofes of the get because maybe we don't say you should write the tofes. Maybe you might come to write the Torah, meaning to say like the first cause of Rebbe Elazar. Look, Shaposa b'tofse Gittin zeir mishum torahs. So he says that the law is like Rebbe Elazar that you need. Hold on one second. He says, so Hilchos Rebbe Lazar, who says that if you don't write the tofes of the get, that it's disqualified because you might come to write the Torah. So, like Rebbe Lazar says, you shouldn't write the Torah, the tofes, because you might also come to write the Torah. Now, Ashman, that would be a big problem. And we say, Kari Rav Oed Rebbe Lazar to Vina de Chakima. He says, calls Rebbe Lazar the best of the rabbis, the smartest of the wise ones. Afil b'shar shtaros nami. So the Gemara says, the Gemara asks, would we say that the halacha is like Rebbe Lazar? And he says that even by shar shtaros, would you say that the law is like Rebbe Lazar, that it's not even allowed even by other documents? Okay, Rashi. With Rebbe Lazar argues with Rebbe Yehuda, and he allows it by tovse shtaros. That's according to the first approach. It says akose tovse Gittin. You have to leave the place. Rebbe Yehuda says it's disqualified. But by all other contracts, would you say the law is like Rebbe Lazar? And he says tovse shtaros. Would you say that is also the case? So. This is the Ishur of the Gittin. This is the certification, the Mirtava Mikmedu Sade Chasimus Yadayo, that was written before they signed their hand. Psula is going to be disqualified. Alma Michse Keshikra, that it looks false. So it looks false to write like this. How could Rebbe Lazar allow us by other documents in advance? The Gemara says V'leisa. So we say we don't paskin like this opinion that Rav Papi said in the name of Rava, Mida Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman, Omar Rav Meir, Afilu Matzo Ba'ashva, that if you found this get in the and even in the trash, so it's chasmu kash, unasanu chasmu unasanu kosher. So he says that even if you found this get in the trash and you signed and gave it to its kosher, and when did the rabbis, i.e. Rebbe Lazar, argue with Rebbe Meir? Only by a get, because there we require with Shema. But by all other contracts, we don't require with Shema, and so there it's okay. And so therefore we say by other documents, you could write it in advance. You don't require with Shema. The Amar of Asi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan Shtar Shalavabo Uparo. The Gemara is going to bring a proof that also the Rabbanan admit by other contracts that even though it was written beforehand, it's kosher. Because Rav Ashi says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Shtar Shalav. But let's say you have this note that says, "I'm borrowing $1 million. Reuven's borrowing $1 million from Shimon." He borrowed the note and then he pays back the $1 million. That same day, he wants to get another loan. Ain't no closer for You can't go back and use that same note to borrow again. Shekvar nimchol shibudo. So what's the reason? Because there's a lien. The document, the first note creates a lien that says any property that's sold after that, this person the lender can go and claim that property as a lien on it. But now that's paid back, that lien is canceled. So if you reuse it, you're reusing that same lien. So you can't do that. The reason why you can't do it is only because the liens were canceled. But not because of falsehood. So you could reuse that document. You just can't get the lien out of it. So it's only okay for free and clear properties, but it's not a question of a falsehood. So that's the Gemara's conclusion. Anybody have any questions? We'll stop here. Shkoyach. We'll do